Welcome back, everybody. We have a special treat for you guys today. The market's trying to decide whether it wants to be bearish or bullish. So we thought it'd be a good time to talk specifically about a particular project and do a deep dive on that. And that project is Reserve Protocol. So we're excited to get into the weeds on it, show you guys a few examples, and talk about what the project's all about. So, Zoe, I think we're going to hand over the reins to you to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Reserve is a project that's been around for a while, and I think a lot of people may have heard of it back in the, 2018, 2019 kind of era. Um, and the project has pivoted a lot. So we wanted to provide you guys with an update on kind of where the project is at and what they're trying to do in the DeFi space now. So what's interesting is that they actually just launched their permissionless platform to basically build, deploy, and govern asset-backed securities, including stablecoins, as well as kind of tokenized vault strategies. And we can kind of get into kind of what that means here. Let me just share my screen and go into slideshow mode. Can you guys see this? Perfect. So what does this really mean, right? So the protocol itself allows you to create a token and back it with interest-bearing collateral from different DeFi projects, right? So you can see here at the top, let's say you wanted to create your own Garcia token, Garcia, right? And you wanted to back it with some yield-generating assets, maybe from Aave, Compound, or Euler, or some of these other borrowing and lending protocols. You could do that, and then you, as the creator of that Garcia token, could then go and say, okay, I'm going to choose where that underlying yield is going from the assets that I've chosen to put in my basket, right? And you would have three choices on how you would distribute that yield. One, it could go back to the holders of the Garcia token. So anybody who's holding that token in their wallet would get access to some portion of the yield that you determined that would be directed to them. Second, it could go to the RSR stakers. Now, RSR is the governance token for the Reserve Protocol. And what this would basically do is go towards the over-collateralization of that token. So in the event of a Terra Luna situation, right, a default in the underlying basket, let's say, in that situation, that RSR would be market sold to basically make up for the defaulted collateral. So it's essentially an over-collateralization mechanism in kind of a unique way. Now, what do these RSR stakers get in return for taking that potential risk and providing that over collateralization? They get a portion of the yield that you, Garcia, could distribute to them. So if you wanted a more safe token, let's say, you could distribute a higher percentage of the underlying yield to these stakers to make sure that, the over collateralization is heavily incentivized. On the flip side, if you didn't really care too much about that, you don't have to direct much, if any, underlying revenue to the RSR stakers. And then the last kind of choice that you have, the third choice, is that you could distribute it to the arbitrary number of addresses, right? So this could be, let's say you wanted to do something philanthropic and donate a portion of the revenue to a charity or something. You could do that. Let's say you wanted to do something kind of crazy and like have it be a lottery contract so that like once every year, one of your holders gets the underlying yield. You could design it to do that. Or you, as the creator of the token, could say, okay, I created this token. I want some revenue stream for myself, and I'm going to distribute a small portion of the revenue to myself. So as this token grows, I could benefit from it, right? So that's kind of the genesis and broad strokes what you can think of as the Reserve Protocol. Does that kind of make sense to you guys? Like, I'm curious what questions you guys have off the bat. And then, I can actually show you the first R token that was developed on the platform just about last week. And we can go through that as kind of an example as well.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's interesting to have so much flexibility with the R token. I think it can have its pros and cons, right? If you have someone with a really specific use case that comes in there and knows exactly what they want to do, I think that's fantastic. It'll be cool to see what the visualizations look like and what the first token deployed on it might be. But I think there's a ton of open opportunity when it comes to use cases with this. And I guess, I had a couple initial questions with that. It was mostly around yield bearing assets. Is that correct?
Yep.
So this would
Yep.
only be DeFi protocols at this time. It wouldn't be other assets like stocks or bonds or gold or things like that.
Exactly. So basically, what you can think of is right now the Reserve Protocol can use any sort of tokenized assets. So any ERC20 asset is theoretically compatible to use as collateral for an R token. That being said, this theme of real world assets being tokenized and brought on chain, Armada, as you said, stocks, bonds, commodities, potentially real estate, things like that, is something that the Reserve Protocol is very bullish on in the long term. So when these tokenized or assets are tokenized and brought on chain, then those would be actually able to be used to back an R token. At the moment, we're a little bit a ways away from getting that kind of done, especially from a regulatory standpoint. But when that does happen, the Reserve platform would gladly accept those as forms of collateral. So I can, I think Armada, you brought up a great point about how flexible the protocol really is, and that's a key, right? There's so many different use cases on what you can create with the Reserve platform, and so I can take you through the first R token that was deployed on the Reserve platform. Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Super exciting stuff too. First one.
Yeah, first one, right? And so you can see down here, RSV, this is Reserve's stable coin that they use within their app that we can talk about in a little bit. But the first R token that was deployed is actually down here. You can find it. It's called EUSD. And so when we come here, the question really is like, what is EUSD? So the first thing is we want to understand who deployed this. And it's a company called MobileCoin. So if we come over here to MobileCoin's website, what is MobileCoin? They basically have a digital app that you can go download right now on iOS or Android. That's a wallet app that allows anybody to basically, it's a wallet app that allows payments, right? You can transmit money back and forth to your friends. They have some really unique features, mainly that it's a privacy-focused blockchain, sub-penny transaction fees, very, very fast. So overall, just a great product, but independent of that, they needed a stable coin to be able to transact on their app, right? They didn't want to use USDC or anything. They wanted to actually have the stable coin they choose be a revenue source for themselves. So what they were able to do is they were able to use Reserve Protocol to create their stable coin called EUSD. Now, if you go to the Mobi app and you download it and you go on there and start using it, you'll be using EUSD, which is their stable coin. And so how they've decided to structure it, as you can see down here, they've used Aave and Compound USDC and USDT, 25% each for each of those collateral backing assets, equaling 100%. So this R token is fully collateralized, just like every R token on the platform. And so when you go and you look at DeFi Llama or something, or you go on Aave and Compound and see these assets, blended together, they're yielding about 2.5%, right? And so what they've decided to do is in their revenue split, as you can see here, they've decided to devote this all to RSR stakers. And as I was saying kind of in the first part, this is because they really are concentrated on their stablecoin not losing its peg. They want it to be as safe as possible, so they're incentivizing that over collateralization and RSR stakers. And as you can see, it's actually worked. So 97% coverage for RSR, right? So the over collateralization is actually, if the market cap of the token is about $1 million, that means about 97% of that is actually backed by RSR as well, right? So you can come down and see there's about 1 million in staked RSR. So this has actually gone up slightly since we were last looking at it. So what's interesting here is what they have is a stable coin that they're able to use on their own platform for their own business, right? But they've gone and they've actually created it on here on Reserve Protocol. And the RSR stakers, so the holders of RSR, can actually come and stake on this R token and participate in the underlying yield, which at this point is about 2.63%. So a very interesting and unique mechanism within DeFi. And so just wanted to kind of provide that example use case. A lot of times it's just easier to visualize it if you see it versus if someone is just explaining it, right?
No, yeah, I mean, I think this is really, really cool, and it's like you said, it's one thing to think about it theoretically, and then it's another thing to actually see it in action in terms of people actually coming in to stake and back the token. And a question that I had around this is because like as you've gone through this more and as we've learned about this more, it's very, very clear that this is a problem in crypto that people have kind of always, thought about and tried to solve, but maybe haven't quite gotten there. And so I'm kind of curious, like from obviously the problem of, okay, how do we easily create stable coins? How do we easily create tokenized real world assets that are yield generating as well? Are there other companies, protocols looking at doing this, or that have that on the roadmap, or that specialize this in this? Or like, I'm kind of curious where other companies are in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's different protocols for, as we mentioned, that there's a lot of different use cases here, right? And so creating your own stable coin is, there's a few different companies aiming to do that. Paxos is probably the most well-known one, right? Where you can go and you can launch your own stable coin. Now, that is a very centralized entity, right? So if you were to do that through Paxos, you would be going through a centralized party. And as we saw with, Binance and BUSD, centralized parties are really in the scope of, various, governments and things like that. And also, as we saw with FTX, you can't always trust centralized entities. The main differentiating factor here is that on the reserve protocol, it's all governed by smart contracts, right? So there's never a question if a token is backed one-to-one. You can go in here and you can see it in the smart contract. You can see the collateral being there one-to-one, right? So that's on the stablecoin side. I'd say that's probably one of the biggest, competitors, I would say, in the launch your own stablecoin space. Now, you can see other places where you can almost create like an index, right? Like a basket of different assets that you could get exposure to by holding one token, right? And just holding the R token. And there's like a few different kind of big players, I would say, like in that index generation kind of space. One I would say is Index Co-op. And I think we may have talked about this like last year on one of our episodes, but an interesting DeFi protocol that allows you to kind of create these ETF type structures, right? The difference there, I think, is really going to come down to liquidity. So if our tokens can gain distribution and liquidity into secondary markets, which makes it really accessible for people to get exposure to them, I think that's going to be a main differentiating factor there, right? Other products include like Yearn and stuff like that. Those also, Yearn vaults, you can go and deposit into different strategies and be passively earning the yield. Meanwhile, Yearn is taking probably a fee on top of that, right? Similarly, like I haven't seen any place where I can go and buy a Yearn position, right? A Yearn vault position on a secondary market or through a wallet app or through any other sort of distribution mechanism, right? You have to go to Yearn's website and go to their vaults and then deposit into their vaults, and only then can you access those. So I'd say those are like two kind of examples of, depending on which product you're talking about, there's different competitors and different kind of a competitive environment and different advantages. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that's super, super helpful. And it sounds like a lot of what I'm hearing is a lot of the competition is segmented between different things of what reserve protocol can do and looks to do in the future, right? So it's not necessarily like there's a direct competitor, but there's pieces of what you guys do that some other folks are trying to do in some way, shape, or form, but not to the mold of what you guys are trying to fit. So that's kind of what I'm hearing.
And it's interesting, at least what I took from the visual you shared earlier, Zoham, was kind of, this is a great way to start to store wealth. I guess my question is it on the roadmap, or is it something that's available to actually be able to start to spend portions of that wealth directly instead of like trading into a local fiat currency or something like that?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Yeah, that's honestly like the $1 million question on like where we see the protocol going into the future, right? the entire goal of the protocol is to help people fight inflation at the end of the day, right? And the way we think people can do that is in the future when all of these real world assets are tokenized and brought on chain. And if there's an R token that kind of is a basket of all of them, and mimics what a high net worth individual's portfolio looks like today, right? Some combination of stocks, bonds, treasuries, commodities, real estate, that whole all blended together into one token, right? That gives you exposure there. One, you get to, get defense from inflation. But two, you also have to be able to spend it. And that's really where our app, RPay, kind of comes in. And so RPay is kind of what we see as the main distribution vehicles for tokens that are created on the Reserve platform. RPay is an app that's live right now in Latin America. I believe it's live in 18 countries. Has about 300,000 transaction volume. Has about 25,000 merchants that actually use it as a form of, or accept it as a form of payment. And right now what they're doing is they're doing this using stable coins, like US dollar stable coins under the hood. But in the future, what we hope to achieve is a world where, an inflation proof currency is actually used within this app. And, that's how people are able to access this over time. So I think that's like, way down the line. But that, you guys have kind of hit all the nails on the head in terms of where the project, where the goals of the project lie and where it's headed.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's super interesting and right, a really lofty goal, right? It's really changing the way that money would work. Obviously, Reserve is betting on tokenization of assets, right? Betting that will occur, even though that's not happened for many assets, as it is currently. It's interesting to look at inflation, especially with it being such a hot topic right now. And I think what's really cool about Reserve is it seems like it wouldn't just be a fix for something like that. It would also be, other than the stability of a currency, it'd be more like financial services around the world, regardless of your location, regardless of who you are, et cetera. Which I think goes kind of back to the reason why blockchain and Bitcoin and the crypto atmosphere took off so heavily in the first place. So I love that it kind of goes back to the deep roots of the community as well.
Absolutely. I always think about how, like, the project itself has a very similar mission to Bitcoin in general. The difference is the main issue that Bitcoin runs into is because it's so volatile, right? That's where becoming like a medium of exchange is very tricky because people don't want to transact using Bitcoin, right? So taking all the same ideas of Bitcoin, but making it like, oh, if we found that right balance of fighting inflation versus not as volatile to the point where somebody would actually want to transact it, that's really like the sweet spot. And that's like the long-term kind of mission of the entire project, I would say.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I think it'd be cool if it could get to a point too where you'd almost have like like people could basically create their own basket of assets and almost follow, certain strategies, right? So if you wanted to be highly indexed on real estate, here's, a stablecoin project that's been put together that is highly indexed on real estate, or here's one that's highly indexed on gold. Maybe there's some that follow, because you can look up like what Warren Buffett invests in or what Charlie Munger invests in. Maybe there's people that have created some that put those baskets together. But I don't know. Like, as you explain this, my mind's just going crazy with all the options that could eventually be on there.
Absolutely. And Reserve has hackathons, and we host hackathons periodically. And so if anybody watching this wants to get involved, make sure to, follow us on Twitter, reach out to us. We'd love to get you guys involved if you have interesting ideas. And that goes for you, Garcia, too.
I'm definitely no coder, but if anyone else out there, knows their JavaScript and their C++ and all that good stuff, feel free to hit them up.
And I already follow, so.
Was there anything else that you wanted to bring up from your side, Zoe?
No, I think I hit all the nails on the head. So thanks guys so much for the great questions.
Yeah, and thank you to all the listeners for diving in with us. You know, like we said, it's kind of more of an interesting time and a good time to look at more specific projects. And so diving into Reserve, this is one that's been on tap for a while, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Definitely gonna have a big impact in the next 5 to 10 years if they're able to execute on their roadmap. So thank you all for listening, and make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the content. And thank you all for being with us tonight. Wag me.
Wag me.